So I think we can start already. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes po.
So we can continue. So I think we ended in this slide, no, and we'll be continuing on to um, the elimination and metabolism. Elimination, which consists of metabolism and excretion. Then later we go to some computations as well in terms of uh, in terms of clinical pharmacokinetics. So as we said earlier, no, elimination is the process in which the drug is removed from the body so that the action of the drug is terminated. And this is achieved through metabolism and excretion. So metabolism is the transformation of the drug from a less excretable form to a more excretable form, while excretion is the process in which the drug is ultimately removed from the body. So uh, drugs are metabolized to a great extent generally no, prior to excretion. However, some drugs are fully ionized at physiologic pH. So sinabi natin ba pag fully ionized ang isang drug, it is charged, therefore it is highly polar. And sabi natin di ba kanina, pagka polar siya, hindi siya or highly charged siya, hindi siya hindi siya able to cross membranes. Therefore, in terms of hepatic metabolism, generally hindi sila nag-undergo na extensive metabolism. So you will see this in your references. For example, sa metabolism part, sasabihin doon na this drug is excreted largely unchanged. So it means most likely this drug is a highly charged drug or highly polar drug kaya hindi siya nag-undergo na extensive metabolism. While for some drugs, they are extensively metabolized and extensively metabolized and therefore nagkakaroon ng nagkakaroon ng transformation yung drug na yon. Now, hindi ibig sabihin lagi na kapag nag-undergo ng metabolism is that the drug becomes less active. As we said earlier, for some prodrugs, uh, uh, these drugs may be metabolized into the active metabolite. Ultimately, this will eventually also be metabolized into the inactive form. Now, uh, I forgot to mention earlier no na yung mga kinetic processes natin like absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion, all of these are actually um, process that occur not in a sequential manner but in a simultaneous manner. So, ibig sabihin, when a drug is taken in and absorbed, a part of that is distributed, a part of the drug is metabolized, and a part of the drug is being excreted already at that same point in time. So hindi siya parang sequential na absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion. So when the drug enters the body, it undergoes all of these processes all at the same time. So hindi siya sequential. Now, for drug metabolism, the drugs undergo sequential metabolic reactions, phase 1 and then phase 2. There are major differences between these two, and we will be discussing them in the next few slides. Now, the major organ of metabolism is the liver. However, other organs such as the kidneys, lungs, and the GI tract, yung mga enzymes in dyan, no, that may also function to metabolize various drugs. So, but here we'll be mainly talking about liver enzymes no, in this next few slides. So, if you look at this figure, yung nasa left na part ng screen, no, this shows to you the phase 1 reactions and the right side yung mga phase 2 reactions. You will see this slide again when you go to pharmacogenetics and just trying to understand here yung alin dito yung mga well studied na hindi pa ganun ka well studied. So yung mga nakalabas dun sa pie, yung mga naka-elevate, yun yung mga needs further studying pa. Yeah, but we know some of the majority of their functions already. Yeah. So one important thing that we need to tackle is first pass metabolism. So first pass metabolism is especially relevant for drugs that are administered orally. So if you remember the blood flow, di ba, before anything that we take in reaches the systemic circulation, if we take it orally, mag-undergo muna siya ng magdadaan muna siya sa portal circulation to the liver. before going to the systemic circulation. So this is what happens when a drug is administered orally. Kasi diba, it will be absorbed in the intestines first, then go to the liver, then to the systemic circulation. So this is why this is the process of first pass metabolism, or some books would state this as first pass effect. So kaya sabi natin, di ba kanina, generally ang bioavailability ng mga drugs that are given orally, mababa siya, no? Mas mababa siya compared sa parenteral routes. So if it occurs as at a high degree, we generally give the drug by another route in order to reduce first pass effect or first pass metabolism. So just a review of the circulation. And actually, you can compute for the actual value of first pass metabolism by computing for the extraction ratio. Pero hindi na natin gagawin to kasi medyo complicated na to. Pang ano na to. Para sa mga nag-aaral na ng mga clinical pharmacokinetics. But just to be familiar, so that you be familiar, the way to the number or the value that measures first pass metabolism is the extraction ratio, or the magnitude of first pass hepatic effect. Which is equal to the clearance of the liver and the blood flow to the liver. Yeah. So, we'll skip this slide, no, hindi na natin masyadong ano yun ito. So, ultimately, what would come out of it is yung pagkuha na, yung pwede natin makuha dito yung systemic bioavailability. So, by multiplying the extent of absorption and the the whole amount of the drug minus the extraction ratio. How much is extracted by the liver. Yeah, so hindi na natin ano yan. We'll skip the slides on the computation. Yeah. If you want to review that, okay lang naman. No? Pero hindi ko natatanungin sa exam. Yeah. So we were mentioning earlier the liver metabolism undergoes two sequential phases. So the first phase is phase 1 reactions, which occur primarily in the liver microsomes, and the most common chemical reactions involved here are oxidation, reduction, and hydrolysis. So among these three, the most frequently occurring chemical reaction would be oxidation. And so ultimately, the drug becomes more reactive and capable of combining with polar conjugating groups. We will mention yung mga conjugating groups na yan later on when we go to phase 2. So basically, this primes the drug so that it can be conjugated. So, but as we said earlier, itong metabolic reaction na to may or may not change the activity of the drug. So, pwedeng it result in a less active drug or a more active drug. Now, another important difference between phase 1 and phase 2 is that the activity of phase 1 metabolic reactions decreases with age. So habang tumatanda, bumababa yung activity ng phase 1. In contrast with phase 2, which is not generally affected by age. Another important difference between phase 1 and phase 2 is that for phase 1, hindi siya ganun ka-specific in terms of the substrate that it will act upon. While pag phase 2, specific siya sa kanyang molecule or substrate na pag-act upon. So these are just some examples. Remember, oxidation. Hindi ko na masyadong yan yung mga example, yung mga specific na mechanism. Just know na yung tatlong important na chemical reactions: oxidation, reduction, and hydrolysis. So among these, sabi ko nga, the most important would be oxidation. And dun sa oxidation, ang pinaka-involved are the CYP enzymes, the CYP enzymes, or you may refer to this as your cytochrome P450 enzymes in the liver microsomes. So these enzymes will also be found in other areas such as the gastrointestinal tract, the kidneys, and the lungs. So ultimately, yung main function nga nito is for oxidation. Sabi ko nga kanina, substrate specificities tend to be low and can overlap. So in the body, we have several isoforms of your cytochrome P450 enzyme. So may code names sila like CYP3A4, CYP2D6, etc. And there can be some overlap. Yung isang CYP enzyme can metabolize several substrates. So these are examples of your major human cytochrome P450 enzymes. So CYP1A2, CYP2C9, CYP2D6, CYP2E1. Now, among these, the most, kumbaga, among the various isoforms, yung pinaka-involved in majority of drug metabolism, ang mga majority ng available drugs are your CYP3A is your CYP3A4 isoform of your CYP enzyme. Later on, next week, we'll tackle pharmacogenomics, and you will see that there are some genetic variations in how these enzymes would function, resulting in pwedeng increased metabolic activity or reduced metabolic activity. So, mga genetic variations in enzyme function. Yeah. So, usually result in activation of drugs. So, however, some exceptions, like for example, codeine, is acted upon by CYP2D6 to generate morphine. So this morphine is the more active form of the drug that produces the analgesic effect as well as the adverse effects associated with the opioid family of drugs. Yeah. So these are your other metabolic reactions. Next, we go to your phase 2 reactions. Yeah, these are your non-microsomal metabolic reactions, and what we just need to remember here is that the primary chemical reaction involved here is conjugation, or the attachment of large polar groups to a functional group, resulting in a more hydrophilic form of the drug, the metabolite, that will be more easily excreted. Now, some chemical groups that can be added, so kaya di ba may mga glucuronidation, sulfation, yeah, amidation, etc. So ultimately, these chemical groups are incorporated in the chemical structure, making the drug more lipid soluble. But again, may mga exceptions din dyan. No? Hindi naman lahat yan nga will generate always inactive metabolites. So there will always be some exceptions. So one exception here is morphine. So morphine undergoes glucuronidation. In terms of the metabolites, yung morphine 6-glucuronide na metabolite is more active. So there will always be exceptions, no, to the rule. So yeah, so I think I mentioned this already earlier, no, that for phase 2 reactions, they show relative substrate specificity. So let's go now to some factors that can affect metabolism. Ano ba yung mga various factors? So meron tayong phenomenon na tinatawag na enzyme induction. So ibig sabihin, pag na-induce siya, na-increase yung function ng enzyme na yan. So this usually applies to your cytochrome P450 enzymes. So certain drugs such as phenobarbital, rifampicin, so these drugs shown here in the example, other conditions or situations like chronic ethanol consumption. If you're a chronic alcoholic, you have induced liver enzymes. Smoking also induces certain liver enzymes. So now the effect on the patient can vary depending on the drug and what metabolism does to that drug. Does it generate active metabolites or does it generate inactive metabolites? In general, the effect of enzyme induction is a reduction in the effect of the drug. But in some cases, enzyme induction can result in increased activity of the drug if the metabolic process results in the generation of an active metabolite. So these are just some drugs, no? Just some examples of drugs and some specific drugs that can induce induction at kung ano yung na-induce nila na metabolism. Like for example, this ethanol, phenytoin, etc. can induce the metabolism of warfarin, OCPs, corticosteroids. So na-reduce yung effect ng warfarin and these drugs on the right side, sa induction na part. What is notable, however, is that enzyme induction does not occur immediately. So usually enzyme induction occurs after 2 to 3 weeks or more of use of the enzyme-inducing drugs. So because the body needs time, no, to induce liver enzymes. In contrast naman, yung enzyme inhibition occurs usually uh, very fast because what happens here is usually competitive inhibition. So pag may competitive inhibition, immediately nagkakaroon ka agad ng uh, inhibition ng enzyme function kasi nare-reduce agad kasi enzyme inhibition yung process by competitive inhibition. So again, pag enzyme induction, it takes longer, while enzyme inhibition, mas mabilis siyang nag-occur in terms of drug interactions. Yeah. So pag enzyme inhibition, ano ba yung mga examples of drugs that can inhibit naman the metabolism? So mga grapefruit juice, erythromycin. So these examples, acute alcohol intoxication, yan, can acutely inhibit enzyme function. So the general effect nga again is tataas yung effect ng mga drugs na to on the right side. Kasi nga na-inhibit mo yung enzyme. So magi-increase yung toxicity. Pagka reduced yung ano yung activity noong enzyme na yan. So other factors would be diet. So the diet may also affect metabolizing drugs. So sabi nga some drugs no can elicit changes in the liver, can induce enzymes at pwede mag-increase yung pag-generate natin ng mga toxic metabolites or it can cause cancer, for example, as stated here. Other factors that can affect metabolism would be genetics. So we'll mention that later on when you go to your lecture on pharmacogenomics. Yeah, so you will be mentioning these examples of genetic variations involving enzymes when you go to your lecture on pharmacogenomics. Yeah, so this is just an example of yung acetaminophen toxicity, which is a result of the metabolism. So usually at the therapeutic levels, acetaminophen or paracetamol, yan, easily conjugated siya into the non-toxic metabolite via conjugation phase 2. Pero kapag high doses yung acetaminophen na takes yung overdose or whether intentional or not, yan, so na-activate yung CYP enzymes. And yung CYP enzymes, particularly CYP2E1, generates a toxic metabolite NAPQI. So yun yung nag-generate ng toxic metabolite causing liver damage. Yeah. So just some implications. So ang implication nito, pagka yung acetaminophen toxicity, actually, mas increase yung risk ng toxicity if the patient has induced liver enzymes. So sino ba yung mga high risk? Pagka yung mga alcoholics, mga nagtitik ng anticonvulsant medications or isoniazid, yan, induced yung liver enzymes nila. So, mas mababa yung margin of safety sa kanila ng acetaminophen kasi mas madaling na-activate yung CYP2E1, mas madali sila mag-generate ng toxic metabolites. So, this is just one example, yung implications ng liver enzyme induction. Let's go now to drug excretion. So, drug excretion is the ultimate na elimination of the drug from the body, usually through the kidneys. So, naiihi. But some drugs we know can be excreted in other tissues or other organs, like for example, breast milk or in the sweat, in the feces. So, we'll be tackling primarily here renal excretion. I think there was may nag-chat lang sandali lang. I think there's a question. Okay lang. Sige, let's start. Sige, wala namang question. Mga late lang nakapasok at mga na-disconnect. Sige, so let's proceed with the drug excretion. Okay, para naghang yung aking slide. Yeah. So, as we said earlier, the primary organ of elimination will be the kidneys and urinary and excretion of drugs. So what would be the factors that would affect the extent of renal drug excretion? So these are the three main processes, glomerular filtration or the GFR, the degree of tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion. Usually this is active tubular secretion. So if you remember, no, renal physiology. So a drug goes to your circulation, goes to the renal artery, tapos pupunta siya sa may glomerulus, di ba? So generally, drugs with low molecular weight and drugs that are yung unbound fraction, di ba? They will be able to pass through the glomerulus and enter the nephron, yeah, in the renal tubules. Yung mga medyo high molecular weight and those that are bound to your serum protein, they still remain in the blood vessel. Now, in the peritubular capillaries, di ba, pwede magkaroon ng renal tubule reabsorption. So there may be passive reabsorption here. As you were discussing earlier, kapag merong equilibration ng substances, di ba, pagka lipid soluble siya, pwede siyang pumunta to the back into the systemic circulation. So pwede nagkakaroon ng tubular reabsorption. Yeah, di ba na-mention nga natin dyan yung ion trapping. Kapag in-alter natin yung pH, hindi na siya pwedeng bumalik back into the systemic circulation. Now, yung third part naman dito, yung active transport or secretion, this occurs, this is applicable primarily for the large molecules and also for some of your protein-bound substances, if there are. But generally nga, they go back, they remain in the vasculature of the patient. So the glomerular capillaries would allow for the passage of molecules less than 20,000, I think this is kilodaltons of your molecular weight. So remember, the corpuscular membrane is negatively charged. So it will repel negatively charged molecules such as your plasma proteins and the drugs that are bound to your plasma protein. So kaya hindi sila na-filter through through your glomerulus. Kaya di ba, if there is a renal damage, one thing that we commonly see is proteins in the urine, no, kapag meron ng damage in the kidneys. So most of the drug in the blood does not pass to the glomerular filtrate but passes into the peritubular capillaries in the proximal tubule. And then they can be transported into the lumen either by tubular secretion or tubular reabsorption. Yeah, tubular secretion is responsible for most renal excretion, and it also allows for the clearance of drugs that are bound to plasma proteins. So remember, tubular secretion. And this occurs through organic anion transporters or organic cationic transporters. Now remember earlier we were talking about movement of drugs, no, across membranes, and we were saying na kapag may transporter, pwede siyang masaturate, and this can also be targets of drug action. So certain drugs can act, for example, to inhibit the excretion of certain drugs. There may be some, they can also act to inhibit excretion of certain normal human metabolites. So the example that is given here is probenecid. So probenecid is a drug that is used in the management of uric acid, high uric acid levels or hyperuricemia. In terms of uric acid metabolism, ang effect niya is blockade ng uric acid reabsorption. Uric acid reabsorption. So pagka na-block yung reabsorption back into the systemic circulation, so then ma-excrete siya. No? Pero one other thing is that the drug probenecid can also block the organic anion transporter. So the organic anion transporter is responsible for transporting certain antibiotics such as penicillins and cephalosporins into the renal tubules for excretion. So if you block this, what would happen would be a higher level of penicillin and cephalosporins in the blood. So this would prolong the half-life of the drug by reducing its secretion or excretion into the kidneys. So, minsan ginagawa yan as a parang advantageous na drug interaction or effect para ma-prolong yung effect ng isang drug. But this can also be a problem if ang na-inhibit would be excretion of the toxic metabolites. So, pwedeng tumaas naman yung levels ng mga toxic metabolites ng patient. Now, tubular reabsorption, I don't think we need to go through this so much in detail. You have already exhausted a lot of time a while ago regarding the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, the principles of ion trapping, and what can be done in order to facilitate excretion of weak acids or weak bases by changing the pH of the nucleus. Yes, so again, this is a schematic diagram of glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion of drugs. So, in terms of quantifying the degree of renal clearance, the computation or the value that is usually measured is the creatinine clearance or the crea clearance. Now remember, if there is no active secretion or glomerular filtration, renal clearance is equal to the glomerular filtration rate. If the drug is protein bound, renal clearance is equal to GFR multiplied by the free fraction of the drug. Now, when computing for the renal clearance or the crea clearance, there are several ways in order to measure it. Ang pinaka-accurate actually is the 24-hour creatinine clearance. So remember, di ba, creatinine is a product of muscle breakdown. So kapag there's a certain amount that can be excreted. So kaya pagka may renal problem tayo, what would happen? So hindi siya na-excrete and it accumulates in the body. So yung creatinine is it's an indirect measure of renal function. Now another way to measure renal function is using the Cockcroft-Gault formula or the equation. This is an estimation of creatinine clearance, and it's actually an overestimate of your GFR. There are several other common equations that are commonly used to measure renal function, pero up until today, yung creatinine, yung Cockcroft-Gault formula pa rin yung ginagamit natin for estimating creatinine clearance. So this is a prediction based on the patient's age, sex, the serum creatinine at a certain point in time, and the lean body weight. Or in many equations, yung body weight lang ng patient. Ideally talaga lean body weight. Pero you will see clinically na common na ginagamit pa rin na value is the actual body weight of the patient. So, kasama sa exam and for your computations, remember the formula for creatinine clearance using the Cockcroft-Gault equation. So, it's 140 minus age multiplied by the lean body weight over the serum crea in milligram per DL times 72. For males, and you multiply it with the factor of 0.85 kung female. So, bakit 0.85 pag female? Kasi, di ba, females generally have lower lean muscle mass compared to males. Kaya may parang correction factor of 0.85 for females. So, this is the way in which we estimate creatinine clearance. So you just use this formula, and what you will get is a value of ml per minute. So the volume that goes to the kidneys that is cleared by the body per minute. So kaya creatinine clearance, ml per minute ang unit niya. So I'm just showing here some of the formula for lean body weight if you want to be more exact. But in your activities later on in your lab, you just use the weight that is given dun sa patient natin. So, huwag yun toxicin ka masyado. Just use the weight ng patient. So, there are other computations or formulas such as the modification of diet in renal disease equation. So, this can also be used. Kaya lang kailangan dito, not just the weight, but I think also the height of the patient to measure the body surface area. So, kasi per body surface area ang mini-measure dito. Actually, it's more accurate, kaya lang medyo hindi siya ganoon ginagamit clinically. And from there, you can actually determine the degree of renal function of the patient. So may staging for chronic kidney disease as an example of measuring renal function by by the creatinine clearance. Now, let's talk about hemodialysis. So hemodialysis is a renal replacement therapy. Wala kang kidney, mag-hemodialysis yung patient. It's commonly used to remove toxic waste. So here, the blood is diverted through a semi-permeable membrane, and it is bathed in an aqueous isotonic solution. This is primarily for patients with renal failure para nga ma-remove yung mga toxic metabolites. So important route siya for drug elimination. So ang question, lahat ba ng drugs can be eliminated by hemodialysis? Kasi ito yung common na tanong. Lahat ba ng mga pasyente na, for example, nag-overdose ng isang drug, o pwede bang hemodialyze yung patient in order to facilitate the excretion of that drug, elimination of that drug? So it actually depends on the drug itself. So if the drug has good water solubility, it is not tightly bound to serum protein, they are small and have a small volume of distribution. So pag small, di ba, naka-distribute siya primarily in the blood, the vasculature. So pagka dun siya primarily naka-distribute, then hemodialysis would be a good way in order to eliminate these toxins or toxicants pala. Pero kapag a drug has a high volume of distribution, o basta opposite itong lahat ng characteristics na to, hindi magandang way ang hemodialysis para mag-eliminate ng mga drugs or facilitate the excretion of that drug. So basta opposite nito, hindi maganda yung dialysis, yung as a way to facilitate excretion. So I think lastly in this part, sa excretion, there is a phenomenon known as enterohepatic circulation. So this is when a drug is conjugated and is excreted into the bile. So pagka yung drug excreted into the bile, syempre, yung bile pupunta sa intestines, diba? To the ampulla of Vater, mag-release ng bile kasama dun yung drugs. And that drug can be hydrolyzed back into the parent compound and be reabsorbed into the circulation. So this is known as enterohepatic circulation. A drug that is excreted in the bile goes back into the circulation kasi it's excreted into the intestines. Generally, a drug that undergoes enterohepatic circulation must prolong yung action niya or effect niya kasi nga it stays longer in the body kasi paulit-ulit, babalik-balik lang din siya. So some applications ng metabolism and excretion. So for example here, yung mga benzodiazepines, you have several types of benzodiazepines, and usually they are classified based on whether they are short-acting or long-acting. And they are short-acting or long-acting depending on whether metabolism results in the generation of active metabolites or inactive metabolites. So as an example here, important long-acting benzodiazepines would be chlordiaz epoxide and diazepam. So they undergo phase 1 metabolism into active metabolites. So makikita niyo dito sa figure na to, yung mga may asterisk, so sila yung mga active metabolites. Yan. Tapos yung mga naka-bold, yan yung mga pharmacologic na, yung mga preparations that are available. So parazepam, farazepam, oxazepam, lorazepam. So these are all preparations of benzodiazepines. So you will see here, chlordiaz epoxide and diazepam, nag-generate siya ng active metabolites. While lorazepam, for example, or oxazepam, these are immediately conjugated into inactive metabolites. So ito yung mga short-acting na benzodiazepines kasi immediately inactivated sila. So generally, kapag mahaba ang half-life, mahaba ang duration of action ng drug natin. And you see here on the right side, yung mga comments, yung mga kung nag-generate ba ng active metabolites. So actually, this table shows to you the half-life, for example, of the parent drug. So, but hindi ibig sabihin na wala na yung parent drug, wala na siyang effect. Because if it generates active metabolites, kahit na maiksi lang yung half-life ng parent drug, pwedeng mahaba yung kanyang duration of action if active metabolites are generated. So I was mentioning a while ago regarding the variations in the half-lives and the duration of action. Kaya they may be classified as such, no, depending on the degree of metabolism. Let's go now to mathematical aspects of pharmacokinetics. So bakit ba to important? No? Ultimately, bakit ba na tayo nag-compute? Kasi gusto natin na tama yung dosing regimen, no, intervals natin for our patient, dosing intervals for the patient. So, in terms of the way the drug leaves the body, we can describe drugs generally into two types of kinetic orders. Drugs that undergo zero-order kinetics and drugs that undergo first-order kinetics. So majority of drugs that we know undergo first-order kinetics, and only a small exception or so small group of drugs, actually tatlo lang sila, undergo zero-order kinetics. So majority will be first-order kinetics. So pag sinabi natin na zero-order kinetics ang elimination niya, the decrease in drug levels is independent of plasma concentration. And yung amount that is excreted is fixed, no? And it is not dependent on plasma concentration. So if you look at the plot of the graph is a straight line, so going down. Only 3 clinically important drugs undergo zero-order kinetics: ethanol, high-dose phenytoin, and high-dose aspirin. So we specify here high dose kasi at low doses, first order sila. But at high doses, they become zero-order kinetics. This is in relation to the saturation of the transporters in terms of excretion. So after a while, parang proportional siya, yung excretion niya is proportional to the plasma concentration. But ultimately, pagka na-saturate na yung receptors, yung transporter na yon, only a fixed amount can be excreted. And so, important yun kasi pagka nagkaroon ng saturation kinetics or pagka na-saturate yung transporters, if you give the drug more frequently than recommended or mas magtaas ka ng dose ng drug mo, mas likely na mag-result siya sa drug toxicity. And in contrast, pag first order kinetics naman, the decrease in drug levels in the blood is dependent on plasma concentration. So you see here an important characteristic that a fixed fraction is or percentage is eliminated per unit time. So in contrast to zero order kinetics, a fixed amount is eliminated per unit time. Pagka first order kinetics, a fixed proportion is eliminated per unit time. And yun nga, it's dependent on the plasma concentration. So you will see the plot of the plasma concentration is exponential. So may curve siya, ganun, hindi siya straight line. Kasi nag-change yung degree of elimination corollary to the plasma concentration. Now, between these two, ano ba ang mas likely na mag-develop ng toxicity pagka nag-accumulate yung drug? Or which drug would accumulate more as you increase the dose of the drug? Is it the drug that undergoes first order or zero order kinetics? So the correct answer is if the drug undergoes zero order kinetics, mas likely siya na mag-accumulate and mas likely siya na mag-develop ng toxicity, yung zero order. Kasi, for example, nagbigay ako ng, for example, you have two drugs, drug A and drug B. This drug A is eliminated at 10, for example, 10 ml every 10 ml per hour. For example, 10 ml, 10 milligrams na lang. 10 milligrams per hour. Tapos yung isa naman, that's zero order kasi fixed amount. Pagka fixed proportion, it's a proportion or fraction. So 10% is eliminated per hour. So kung bibigay ako, for example, ng 100 milligrams of the drug, no? After 1 hour, yung drug A ko na 10 milligrams per hour, after 1 hour, sa blood ko, 90. Yung isa, 90 rin kasi 10% of 100 minus 10%. But if I increase the dose, for example, or the plasma concentration, for example, ginawa kong 200 ml, 200 milligrams yung in-administer ko. Sa drug A na zero order kinetics, ang amount nun would be 200 minus 10. Diba? 200 minus 10. So 190 sa blood. Pero dun sa first order kinetics, 200 no, minus 10% of 200. So mas konti siya. Ano ba yung 10% ng 200? 20. Diba? Tama ba ako? O basta, mas konti yung, so yung mas less na mag-accumulate yung first order kinetic kasi a fixed proportion of the drug is eliminated per unit time. Whereas pag zero order, a fixed amount of the drug is eliminated per unit time. Oras na. So we have 142 na. So let's go now to the compartment model. So ba't ba natin gagawin to? The primary purpose of pharmacokinetic data analysis nga is to determine dosing for our patients. I think I mentioned this already. So yung mga nakikita natin sa libro, these are based on population parameters. So there are several there are several mathematical models that we can use to characterize drugs. So you have the one compartment model, the two compartment model. So pag one compartment model, sinasabi lang dito na parang one compartment lang yung drug, yung body. So when a drug enters the body, it is absorbed, immediately distributed, and metabolized, and eventually excreted. So here we can look at the half-life. So half-life is the time taken for the plasma concentration to fall to half of the initial drug dose that was administered after complete absorption and distribution. You may be confused here, bakit this is first order, tapos yung line is a straight line pababa. No? Sabi natin, di ba, dapat exponential pa curve siya. So, kaya you notice here na yung concentration ng drug natin is in logarithmic intervals. So pag logarithmic intervals na, nag-iba yung intervals ng number, kaya yung parang curve line nagiging straight line siya. So basically, ang naging ginagawa lang natin dyan is para ma-interpret kapag interpolate tayo and to see kung ano yung magiging plasma levels after a particular point in time. So half-life is a measure that is related to the elimination rate constant. So, ano ba yung rate constant na yan and bakit may nakasulat? Ano ba yung natural logarithm na yan? So, yung natural logarithm is the logarithmic interval in which things in nature would naturally decline. So, yun yung interval niya, kaya natural logarithm. So, hindi na natin i-memorize no, or aalamin kung paano natin na-derive itong formula na to ng half-life. Yung time required for the drug to reach half of its initial concentration. So just remember this formula, 0.693 multiplied by the volume of distribution of the drug over the clearance. So yan yung related yon sa elimination rate constant. So what would be important here is that this formula will be commonly used in a lot of your equations. Usually naman binibigay yung VD or clearance, or you can extrapolate it from the equation that was given to you. So yung clearance is, ang tatandaan nyo ng formula naman dito, clearance is the body's ability to remove the drug from the blood. And this is the amount of blood that is cleared of the drug per unit time. So a way also to compute for the clearance. So ito, memorize ulit itong formula na to. Rate of elimination of the drug over the plasma drug concentration. So this is the formula for clearance. So ano na yung mga ano natin kanina, volume distribution, half-life, clearance. So pag rate, 'di ba? Ang magiging volume nito ultimately ng clearance natin is volume per unit time. Kasi 'di ba? Ano ba yung rate? Yung volume per hour or volume per unit time yung rate. Sorry, amount no per unit time. Tapos yung plasma concentration naman is mass, 'di ba? Mass per volume. So pag na-cancel natin yung ano, yung mga units niyan, volume per unit time. So yan yung pag-compute natin ng clearance. So pagka two compartment model naman, parang ang kailangan natin tandaan dito, yung dito sa baba, that may dalawang phases, may alpha phase at saka may beta phase. So yung alpha phase is the early rapid phase that which represents your distribution. Tapos yung beta phase naman yung later na slower phase na may more constant na elimination. So this is yung first phase, yung alpha phase na may rapid na pababa. Tapos yung beta phase, no, ito, yung formula, ay yung line natin. So basta tandaan niyo yung alpha phase, yung mas mabilis, which represents redistribution, while beta phase is a combination of elimination and distribution. I'll skip these slides already. So let's go na lang dito sa model-independent approach. So most of our computations will be based on the model-independent approach kasi mas advantageous siya. Hindi natin kailangan ng mga masyadong maraming complicated na computational models for the model-independent na approach. So kasi various drugs can have different characteristics. So ito, we can do this by simple computations. So mas mas madali natin i-compute. So when we talk of the steady state concentration, so this is the concentration in which the amount of influx is equal to the amount of efflux, yung na-eliminate from the body. And usually when a drug reaches that steady state concentration, ito na yung parang desired na concentration natin. So dapat the drug should reach that particular na steady state concentration. So this graph here shows to you the plasma concentrations of a drug that is given orally at regular intervals. So may peaks ka, may mataas, tapos may mababa or troughs na level. Now, para maging clear lang ito, no, itong slide na to, just remember, during constant infusion of a drug or constant interval of administration of a drug, it will take a certain amount of half-life, a certain number of half-lives before the drug reaches steady state concentration. Usually, kailangan niya ng 4 half-lives to reach 94 to 100. So, example, a drug has a half-life of 4 hours. So if I take a drug now, orally, for example, 500 milligrams, for example, after 4 hours, yung plasma concentration, yung nasa katawan ko na lang is 250 milligrams. So nag 50% na siya. At that time, I will also take another dose of the drug. Di ba? So after 4 hours uli, or after 8 hours, magiging 75% na siya of the steady state concentration. So it increases yung kanyang amount. So after 3 half-lives na constantly ko tinitake yung drug, mag-reach na yung 87.5%, and after 4 half-lives, the drug would reach 94% or very near the steady state concentration. So kailangan natin tandaan lang dito, itong kailangan tandaan. It will take generally 4 half-lives before a drug will reach steady state concentration. So if a drug has a half-life of 4 hours, and if you're taking the drug every 4 hours, it will take 16 hours, no, bago niya ma-reach yung steady state concentration. Kung 12 hours yung half-life ng drug, it will take 4 half-lives. So 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12. So 48 hours bago niya ma-reach yung steady state concentration. Now, when you talk now about loading dose, ano naman ba ang loading dose? So the loading dose is the dose that is required in order for you to reach immediately the steady state concentration uh, by filling the volume of distribution of the patient. So if you look at this formula, this is actually a derivation of the formula ng volume of distribution. So if you remember, ano ba yung volume of distribution? VD is equal to dose administered over plasma concentration. So kung babalik na natin doon, nahanapin natin yung dose administered, ang makukuha natin doon would be the loading dose. So loading dose is equal to VD, the volume distribution, multiplied by the steady state concentration. Usually, yung steady state concentration, sabi nga natin, yan yung desired na plasma concentration ng patient natin. Bakit importante ang loading dose? Ito yung dose na kailangan nga natin, di ba, para ma-reach na kaagad yung steady state concentration. Hindi natin kailangan i-take yung drug, for example, every 4 hours, another 4, para mag-require pa ng 4 half-lives para ma-reach niya yung steady state concentration. At that particular time, pag tinake mo na yung, pag in-administer mo na yung drug, ma-reach niya na kaagad yung steady state concentration. Kasi if you feel niya agad yung volume of distribution ng patient. Importante to sa mga emergency procedures or where you need, for example, antibiotics. Tapos septic na yung patient, no, gusto natin na ma-achieve kaagad yung steady state concentration. So, ito yun, no, yung loading dose na formula. You will see here, may F. Ano ba yung F? Remember kanina sa first few slides is the bioavailability. So yung bioav, magiging importante yan if the drug is given in a route other than the intravenous route. So ilalagay natin dyan, for example, yung oral bioavailability ng drug, like 80% or 0.8. So i-divide natin yung amount na yan to account for the reduction in the bioavailability. So pag dinivide natin dyan, what will happen kapag oral yung distribution, mas mataas siya. Ay oral yung dose, mas mataas siya compared dun sa IV. Kasi nga, yung bioav niya, mas mababa. So we give a higher dose kapag a drug as given a lower bioav. So, pero kung sinasabi sa equation or sa problem na IV siya, we presume that bioavailability is 100%. So, yeah. So, next naman is the maintenance dose or the dosing rate. So, this can be either for IV infusion or oral administration. So, this is the formula for computing the IV infusion rate or the dose that you will give per interval ng patient for proper dosing ng maintenance. So, this would be important in patients with reduced renal or hepatic function. Remember this important fact, no? Pagka ang patient may renal or hepatic dysfunction, the maintenance dose changes, but the loading dose does not. Bakit? Kasi di ba, pag ang pasyente, yung volume of distribution naman niya generally is not affected by the clearance of the drug by hepatic or renal function. Ang clearance is affected by the renal or hepatic function. And if you see in this formula, maintenance dose is based on the is anchored on the clearance of the drug. So the maintenance dose is changed or is altered kapag may renal or hepatic dysfunction ng patient. So pag IV infusion, the infusion rate will be the known clearance of the drug multiplied by the desired steady state concentration. Pagka naman oral, it is the clearance of the drug multiplied by the steady state concentration multiplied by tau. Tau yung dosing interval. So for example, sasabihin sa problem is to be divided in 8 in 3 divided doses. So ilalagay natin dyan is 8 hours kasi magiging 3 pagka divided into 3 times a day, so 24 divided by 3 is 8. So 8 hour intervals yung dosing. So yun yung ibig sabihin dyan ng tau. And then you find there again yung F, yung bioavailability for oral administration. So again, dosing rate is clearance multiplied by the desired plasma concentration over the bioav. So, importante that you tell your patients that you take the drug based on the recommended intervals and that based on the half-life. Usually yung dose interval natin is based on the half-life of the drug. So kung 4 hours siya, every 4 hours natin siya tinitake or 6 hours, every 6 hours natin tinitake yung drug. Bakit hindi pwede na i-take natin yung dalawang drug, for example, ngayon, tapos dalawa mamayang hapon, and we still achieve the same dose on the day or for that day for that drug, because you can have super therapeutic levels, tapos pag haba masyadong interval, bababa naman siya sa subtherapeutic levels. So important that the patient remains in the range ng therapeutic dose. So hindi masyadong malaki yung interval at hindi masyadong malaki yung dose na bibigay natin. So this is the reason why we need to give the drugs at appropriate intervals. So let's go now to correction. So sabi nga natin, di ba, pagka-reduced renal function, ang pinagbabago yung maintenance dose natin. This is what you will be discussing in your laboratory later on for the, I think for the GERYA patient ng reduced renal function. So the corrected dose is the average dose of that drug multiplied by the patient's creatinine clearance over 100 ml per minute. So ano ba yung 100 ml per minute? Yan yung normal. So basically what you should be doing is to compute for the creatinine clearance of the patient, and then you divide it by 100, which is the normal. So parang titingnan natin yung fraction. So ang lalabas dito sa part na to, sa yung multiply natin sa average dose is the fraction from the normal. So ito na lang yung i-administer natin na corrected dose. So you will also note here, syempre, ang maapektuhan lang sa computation would be affected by renal clearance. So kunyari sinabi dito, a drug is cleared 50% by the kidneys and 50% by the liver. If the normal dose is 200 milligrams per day, and the hepatic renal elimination rates are each 100 milligrams per day, what would happen to the average dose if the patient's clearance is 20 ml per minute? So remember, yung renal function lang yung reduced dito, yung liver walang problem. So gagawin natin dito, 50% lang yung babaguhin natin. Yung sa liver na part, hindi na magbabago yan. So kaya dun sa liver, 100 mg per day pa rin. Pero dun sa kidney na excretion, 100 mg, it will multiply it with the amount of the remaining renal function ng patient. So 100 milligrams multiplied by the quantity of 20 over 100 or 0.2. So that will give you 20 milligrams per day. So here, the adjusted dose would be 120 milligrams per day. Kasi ang in-affect lang natin dito, yung sa kidneys. Yan. So 100 pa rin sa liver, tapos 20 sa kidneys. I think this is the last slide. And then some of the examples here are just yung mga problem solving na equations natin. Medyo self-explanatory naman ito in order for you to compute. No? Just remember here, I'll give you the PowerPoint presentation with the notes. So I'll send it to you so that you can read the notes dun sa baba para ma-understand nyo yung part dito sa problem solving na to. No? Kasi may notes sa ilalim para mas maintindihan nyo kung paano naka-arrive doon sa computation. I think it's already 2 o'clock kasi I think you have a quiz. May quiz kayo. Yan. So, pero sa quiz naman wala pang computation. So, don't worry about the computation yet. Sa quiz, ang main part is on the principles lang. Yan. So, if you have no questions, may questions ba? You can message me through Telegram kung may questions kayo regarding the PowerPoint. So yung rest of the computations, you can go through that as examples. And then I'll give you the PowerPoint presentation para makita niyo yung mga explanations dun sa problem solving na part. Sa exam natin sa major exam, doon ako bibigay na lang ng computation. Okay? Pero sa shifting, wala na lang muna. Okay? So, doon tayo, yung problem solving natin sa shifting exams. Yan. So, if you have no more questions, you can go to your next class. Ay, may quiz pala. You can go to Moodle now and take your quiz.